Welcome back, and let's get started. Picture this. You're walking into a meeting with your executive team, or maybe, and this is the serious version, you're sitting across from an assessor, and you need one screen that tells the truth about where your CMMC readiness really stands across all 14 domains. That screen is the health report at /health. And I like to think of it this way. The dashboard is the headline, the controls page is the homework, and the health report, that's the MRI, not the waiting room, not the clipboard, not the cheerful brochure at the front desk, the MRI, the picture that shows what's actually going on underneath. Now, the dashboard at /dashboard is your compliance command center. It gives you overall readiness, domain by domain progress, the journey progress bar, even the audit countdown. It's useful. It is supposed to be useful, but it's a summary surface. It's the big number, the overview, the kind of thing you glance at and say, okay, I know what kind of day I'm having. We've all had those dashboards. Then you have controls at /controls, and that's where the real work lives. All 110 NIST SP 800 171 Rev 2 controls organized across those 14 CMMC domains. Every control has plain English guidance. What this means, what you need to do, what proof you need. You can update status, add notes, upload evidence, ask AI about that specific control, generate a policy. That's the homework, necessary homework, the kind with 110 assignments, which is why nobody should pretend compliance is just a vibe. It is not a vibe. It is paperwork with consequences. But the health report sits in the middle in a really important way. It takes all that detailed control status data and turns it into an honest visual snapshot. Not just, are we busy, but are we healthy? And those are not the same question. I've seen plenty of organizations working hard, uploading documents, checking boxes, feeling productive, and the posture is still uneven. One domain is in good shape, another is sagging, a third looks fine until you realize the critical controls aren't where they need to be. That's why this page matters. It lets you stop admiring activity and start seeing posture. Across access control, audit and accountability, configuration management, identification and authentication, all the way through system and information integrity, you get the full shape of your readiness, not just a pile of completed tasks. And because CMMC Level 2 means all 110 NIST 800 171 controls spread across 14 domains, leadership needs a way to absorb that without reading every single control card. An executive team doesn't need to open ACL1 3.1.1 and read implementation notes line by line. An assessor might go there eventually, sure, but first they need the posture view. They need to know where you're strong, where you're exposed, and whether the story your organization is telling matches the evidence. So if somebody asked me, what report do I print, get it ready for a handout, or put on the big screen? This is it. The health report is the page I would bring to an assessor. It's the page I would bring to a boardroom because it is visual, direct, and just honest enough to make people a little uncomfortable. And in compliance, uncomfortable can be a blessing. It means you're finally looking at the real picture. So, what are you actually looking at on the health report? The centerpiece is the compliance radar chart, and this is where that MRI metaphor earns its keep. The radar shows all 14 CMMC domains at a glance, so instead of reading a long spreadsheet, you see the shape of your compliance posture, and shape matters. If one side of that radar caves inward, say physical protection, the PE domain, or access control, AC, that dip tells you something immediately. It tells you the risk is not evenly distributed. You may have decent completion in some areas and a real gap in others. That's important because organizations often assume readiness is kind of averaged out, like, well, we're doing okay overall, maybe. But if access control is weak, that's not a cosmetic problem. If physical protection is lagging, that's not just a small administrative miss. Those domain family dips show where your exposure lives. Then you get the overall compliance health score with a color-coded badge. That's your top line number. The thing executives will look at first because of course they will. Humans love a score. We always want the one number that tells us whether to relax or panic, but the trick here is not to stop at the score. The score is the headline. The radar tells you why. Below that, the report breaks domains into clear cards. You can see percentage completion by domain, plus status cues that help you spot which areas are in decent shape and which ones are still critical. In practical terms, you can quickly identify your strongest areas and the ones that need work without digging through all 110 controls one by one. That's the value. Fast pattern recognition. You are turning raw compliance data into a management decision. And I especially like that this page doesn't leave you stranded in Chartland because a lot of tools do that. They show you a fancy graphic and then basically say, well, good luck. Enjoy your polygon. Here you also get the AI health analysis, a plain English health summary generated from the real domain scores. That AI layer matters because not everybody reads a radar chart the same way. The summary explains your strongest areas, your biggest gaps, and one specific recommended next action, not generic advice, not improve security posture, which means absolutely nothing at 4:30 on a Tuesday. I mean a real next move. Something like finalizing the system security plan in documents, where the platform can generate an SSP using your actual control statuses as context. And that's where the platform starts to feel less like a passive reporting tool and more like a guide. The health report says, here's the truth. The AI health analysis says, here's what that truth means in plain English. And then it points you toward the strategic next step instead of making you invent one from scratch. So when you open /health, don't just ask, what is my score? Ask, where is the dip? Which domains are marked critical? What pattern is this chart revealing? And what is the one next move that changes the picture? Because that's the real game in CMMC, not admiring the numbers, but knowing which action actually bends the radar outward. That's the kind of picture worth bringing into the room. Head over to /health and take a look at where your organization rests within your compliance journey.